from the Healthcare Gateway, who's going to talk about engaging with industry and introduce us to the topic. Okay? So that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, so a real sort of change in tack now. I'm going to talk in very sort of general terms about knowledge exchange and engagement with industry, and then Paul Hatton's going to talk much more specifically about industry-sponsored PhD studentships. So, first of all, who the heck am I? I'm Karen Wilkinson. I'm a business manager at the Healthcare Gateway, and that is the faculty support for all things knowledge exchange, industry engagement, translational funding, and IP commercialisation, IP development and protection. Right, so looking around the room, I'm probably telling you stuff here that you already know, actually. So why engage with industry? And I always like to, I think it's useful to put it in context, to think that actually no one group, whether it's academic or industry-based or in any other kind of organisation, has all the skills or all the knowledge, and working in collaboration expands that pool of skills and knowledge. It helps us to identify the real challenges out in the commercial world. So we might think we've invented the best thing since sliced bread, but actually, is it feasible to actually put it out there and reach the market or reach its intended users? So working with industry can actually put a real sense check on identifying the real challenges. Working with industry also helps us translate our work out into the real world. So universities aren't and can never be set up to market, sell, support the customers, perform regulatory kind of perform kind of customer support, post-marketing surveillance, ensure that regulatory measures are put in place, put products onto the market. So what we will tend to do is, at some stage, hand over our research or hand over our work to another body to perform those kind of roles. And we do that by licensing our intellectual property. Sometimes we set up our own company, but more often than not we'll license our work to someone else to do that. We're working with industry also gives us that kind of magic bullet access to more funds, and it works, or more different types of funds, and it works both ways. It works for us as an academic institution, and it also works for industry as well. By clubbing together, it kind of opens up more doors into funding. The reason I mention industrial strategy is because I don't know if you've come across this already. So the industrial strategy is a government's plan to create an economy that boosts productivity. And to support the industrial strategy, they've created the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, and it's what everybody's been talking about over the past sort of year or so. They're channeling over $4 billion in R&D funds over the next 5 years. These funds all must be led by industry. They're made available and delivered through Innovate UK and UK R&I. So just a kind of word on funding, watch out for those. Sign up to Innovate UK mailing lists, sign up to any of the events that they've got going, which are kind of based on putting collaborations together in order to be eligible and to make yourself more ready for applying to some of these funds. There's also the opportunity to get involved in creating these calls as well, so creating the direction of these calls. We've just come out of the consultation period for wave 3 of the ISCF, so there'll be wave 4 to follow, and that's the opportunity to work with industry to put forward those challenge areas, and then in due course the calls come out based on those challenge areas. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Before looking to engage and make contacts and set up partnerships with industry, it's really worthwhile having a think about what you have in your research groups which is of value to industry. So it could be that you have an innovation or an invention. It could be that you have knowledge on how to do a particular procedure. You've got skills, you've got facilities in-house, that could be useful. It's also worth doing quite a lot of homework before you actually make contact with industry to figure out actually how valuable that IP, that invention, that innovation, that knowledge or skills or facilities actually is. And you can do that by doing a sort of sense check on how unique it is. So, is it novel? Who else is working in this field? Has any company already put a product out on the market that you might be unaware of? It's really worth doing a quick search of Google patents, for example, or just kind of looking out there to see what else is going on in this field. And it all helps you figure out quite how valuable your work is to an external organisation. Does it meet an unmet clinical need? If it does, in what way does it meet that need? Is it plugging a gap that's currently unaddressed? Does it or is it better than current gold standard treatment? Have you talked to patients? Have you talked to clinicians? Have you talked to surgeons? Have you talked to carers? That'll help you figure that out. Does your work, if it doesn't meet or maybe it does meet an unmet clinical need, but could it also improve processes or manufacturing techniques in industry? Could it help industry do something that they already do better? Does it plug that skills gap that industry has? Does it help them crack that problem that they've been trying to crack? And then you should be looking at who the beneficiaries would be of your work, which is of value. So who are the patients? How big a patient pool is it? How many customers? How many users? Do some work in that kind of area. And you might not actually know the answers to some of these, or you might not know the answers to any of these, but working with industry can help answer some of those questions. But I suppose the bottom line is do a bit of homework first. Intellectual property. So you could, once you've figured out what it is that you have of value, it's fair to say that that will actually be intellectual property of some kind. And I think there's a tendency to conflate the terms intellectual property and patents, and that's not the case. So IP essentially is a creation of mind, and it can take all sorts of forms, from just knowing how to do something specifically. Could be data, could be cell lines, could be information that you have, could be right the way through to registered IP. And by registered I mean it's been patented, or it could be that it's on the way to being patented, and it could be patentable, I guess. I guess the more unique, the higher value whatever it is that you have has. So something that has a patent already is going to be of higher value to something that hasn't. But everything has a value of some kind. I think the next step would be to figure out what you could benefit from working with industry. Is it that you need a sense check on what you're doing? Is it that you think someone's got a product pipeline that your innovation could slot into? Do you need information on the market? What could the partner benefit from? And actually, where's the crossover? Where are the synergies? Also have an idea on the mechanisms that you could put into action to take these synergies forward. So do you think that it's relevant to have a PhD student working with a company? Is there an opportunity for a industry-sponsored placement? Is there an opportunity for some kind of sabbatical? Could we go straight for applying for collaborative R&D funds together? Just have an idea of actually what's on the table. Bit about picking the right partners. I think most of the collaborations that we see come out of a relationship that already exists in some form or other, but whether it's an alumni, whether it's a personal relationship. But most of you here will know the companies that are active in your field and have some kind of contact with them already, I think. If you haven't, don't worry, there are plenty of networking events. You can come to the Healthcare Gateway and ask for advice, see who we know, ask friends, ask colleagues. But yeah, pick the right partners. Try and work with people who have a shared agenda. Try and work with companies who are research heavy. Try and work with companies, even if they don't have a lot of money in the bank, that they're adept and proficient at applying for money. So we work with a lot of SMEs. They don't have great cash flow, but some of them are absolutely excellent at applying for research grants. So pick the winners and don't waste time. Kill the projects that aren't going anywhere. I think it's fair to say that if you're having trouble getting a confidentiality agreement in place, let's say, with a company, then they're probably not the kind of company that you want to carry on working with. If things are difficult to start off with, that's probably a bad sign. So yeah, on a practical level, do your homework, set expectations when you're actually making contact with a company, when you're arranging to meet and talk with a company, have an agenda, let them know what it is that you want to get out of the meeting, ask them what they want to get out of the meeting, make sure that you've got any kind of confidentiality agreements in place that you need to do that, especially if you're going to be talking about something that's commercially sensitive. So don't disclose your ideas. Don't disclose your ideas if it's not under an NDA, especially if you're if you're working on something that is potentially patentable. Talk to the Healthcare Gateway, actually, we can advise you on all of this. Spend some time getting your pitch right, consider who the audience is, pitch it accordingly. Be clear, don't be afraid to mention sensitive subjects such as IP ownership, monetary arrangements. Businesses are used to this. I know we all kind of tend to skirt around those sort of issues. Work with support staff, did I mention? Contact the Healthcare Gateway. Yeah, and do things like sign up to Innovate UK newsletters, website, look at the websites, see what networking events are coming up. You've got the Academic Health Science Network locally, who do a lot of work in putting industry and academics together. You've got the Northern Health Science Alliance, and you've got the Gateway as well. You're probably going to have lots of ideas, you might have to kiss a few frogs, but don't be disappointed. And even the smallest kind of relationship can lead to bigger things and longer term partnerships as well. So yeah, here at the Healthcare Gateway, we can support you in the whole KE pathway, which includes commercialisation of IP, which I mentioned, and support you in industry engagement. There are some funds available to support that kind of pathway from start to finish, so whether it's train fare to visit someone, whether it's seed funding to kick off a relationship, right through to a bit more in-depth IP development. The main sources of that funding are HIVE, but we do have MRC funds as well in the Confidence in Concept and the Proximity to Discovery. Proximity to Discovery encourages sabbaticals in and out of the university for industry engagement. But yeah, I will hand over to Paul to go into more detail about PhD studentships. Take that with me.
Thank you, Karen. By some miracle, we're only 13 minutes late on a very busy morning, so I'm going to try and keep mine a little bit short to keep us close to finishing on time as far as possible. So I'm going to set my time over 10 minutes. So I want to just go through the benefits, really, and some of the pitfalls of working with industry, particularly with studentships. And I'll cut a long story short, I was pretty much converted to this in around 2005 when I took a mission over to the USA to look at the impact of conversion technologies on devices in our research field. And I had a kind of a dancing moment when I realised that actually when universities work with industry, they could achieve a phenomenal amount for all of the people involved and indeed for the economy of a nation. And I was completely swept away with this at the time, so I've held this view for quite some time. As head of research for the dental school now, I'm conscious that many of my colleagues and indeed my group work extensively with industry. And I think this is our current list of all of our industrial partners who work with the dental school. I did a quick survey, apologies if I missed one of your projects, and I put boxes around those where we have PhD student engagement. The vast majority are either case studentships or they are industrially funded studentships. One or two are placements. I had a student placed on an electrical company, which was a much smaller and focused thing, but at the time she still came back with some very valuable information around using a different polymer supplier. So all of these things are very valuable. So I'm going to really kind of distill the benefits and the risks of this in a nutshell in my talk. And at the risk of repeating what Karen said in one nutshell, I've been watching the pendulum travel for some time towards pushing universities to engage more with industry and end users. And that trend is not going to change. And in fact, the culmination thus far is this release of a phenomenal amount of money, where the government are determined to increase the proportion of our GDP that goes into R&D in the UK. And they expect universities to deliver a better return on this investment. Irrespective of what we think, the government think we need to deliver more for the UK economy. So, a PhD studentship can be, not always, but usually, an excellent form of collaboration for the right project. And that's what I'm going to talk about very briefly now. There are lots of different kinds of collaborations, case and case-like studentships, direct industry funded studentships, so they're going to be the focus today, but of course there are also industrial placements that are very beneficial, and indeed small projects where we've had mixed, usually positive, but one or two mistakes when we've done small projects using PhD students in that capacity. And there isn't really time to talk about all of these things, so I'm going to talk very briefly to some degree about things I hope you know, and if you don't know, then the take-home messages. So the benefits are huge. You can use a PhD student to build a relationship with an industrial partner, because having a studentship, and as we've discussed today, managing them and directing them properly means that you invest time and energy and thought into that project, and that means that also goes into the industrial partnership around that project. It's also, in the current climate, a potential, working more with industry in general and with a focused PhD studentship, because sometimes it can be a pathway to impactful research. There are obvious pitfalls, again, which I haven't got time to go into, but it's about very careful and thoughtful management as well. And of course, once you have a studentship working on a project, you build that relationship, you get more ideas, you hopefully get a better rapport with those industrial partners and that industrial entity, and then it becomes a source of future projects, which means you can align things like Innovate UK more effectively, and, controversial at the moment, hopefully in the future, EC projects, and of course officially right now as well. And this opens up huge opportunities for research funding that would not be available to the institution if you were on your own. They are only available for either industrially led or industrially collaborative projects. So it's potentially important. If you haven't started, you need to be starting now to think about these things. Hopefully most of us have in a faculty like our own. And it's very educational. I've learnt a phenomenal amount. In the old days, we had this word knowledge transfer, which was the idea that we were very intelligent and we went to industry, and these kind of Luddites with their empty brains would receive us in amazement at the brilliance of what we could tell them. Of course, you discover actually they know as much as we do about other things, and some things that are complementary, and you learn a phenomenal amount from working with another industrial partner, as you would with collaborating with an academic group. Now, that's the benefits for us. Of course, there's also a PhD student involved, and quite rightly, a lot of the focus today has been making sure that we manage and get the best for our PhD students as well as for our research groups in the UK. There's no doubt in all of my PhD studentships that I've had, they have benefited from working with industry. their breadth, their perspective, their understanding of their own value, all of those things have been increased. And alongside that, I'd say that they also therefore get improved employability, and they are more stimulated. I think that sometimes PhDs, and I know I probably felt the same, you send it to, well, what's the point of my research? And if they're engaged with a bigger audience, including an industrial partner, they do start to understand there is value in what they're doing. And it's a really important message that I think most PhD students have to discover as early as possible in their journey. There are, however, risks. I won't pretend there are risks, and we have had one or two things that have gone awry in the course of doing this, and of course, when you've got a student involved, it's important we try and mitigate those risks. Clearly, there are delays to publication, and I consider that usually quite a good thing. This is a very competitive area, because we're trying to get a patent or something. Indeed, I think apparently talking about one of the recent patents that was for their application that's gone out. Is it gone to now? Yes. So it has been a delayed publication, but we will have a patent as a result, and that means that we can hopefully commercially exploit that IP. You do see misunderstandings, and clear communication in all walks of life, including with industry, is absolutely the bottom line, and I think that reduces the risk of a misunderstanding or a conflict of interest arising, but I have seen them, undoubtedly. The research can be sidetracked, and again, that's as much about being a good advisor and having good communication with your team or with your student and industrial partner again, but it is possible to get sidetracked, and it has to be said that a PhD studentship is not always the best mechanism for working on something. Because the PhDs have needs as well, and that includes getting a publication or more at the end of their PhD, and includes presenting at conferences. So we, for example, very often deliberately put in a confidential element to a PACE studentship and a non-confidential element, so the bits the students can talk about freely, and the part that we're going to protect, because we're going to bring it hopefully towards a patent or something similar. So manage correctly is the key word there. An industrial partner should enhance and not undermine a PhD. And I'd say that communication is the key point. And the other point that Karen made very, very clearly, which I should have there on the next slide, is that you use the local expertise at the university. In particular, the Gateway are very, very good, a lot of experience helping us in other groups with working with industry, and indeed in research services, there's a considerable amount of expertise that you can draw upon around contracts and best practices. So my tips and conclusions: understand your industrial needs of your partner, try and communicate as clearly and professionally as possible at all times, and see if you can do that in money. Get those things on the table. Don't be embarrassed about things like that. You give them the sense of the true cost after getting it costed properly, professionally, which makes you don't want an envelope. I know some of us do. I honestly am convinced that 99 out of 100 they enhance a studentship and a research project, and where things go wrong, hindsight is a wonderful thing. So I think on that note, be aware that's the trend, and I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we've actually finished on time.
One minute.
Are there any questions for Paul or Karen, or for any of the speakers who are here? Right. Well, thank you all very much for coming, and look forward to seeing you this time next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.